there's a couple of amendments that I want us to deal with, and then I think we should just basically bring an end to today and come back in the morning with having reviewed staff advice and thought about some of the amendments that have been proposed in light of some of the discussion that we've had today. For example, the changes that I've made to the phase program of capital release, that might mean that people would like to have a look at the wording of the particular amendments in light of the change that I've proposed. And the other thing is that because some of the proposals drill into individual projects on the land drainage recovery program, I've asked Carleen if she could arrange for staff to do a quick, 5-minute presentation at the beginning of that one, so that we can actually drill into the issues around individual projects, because I know that we're going to be doing quite an extensive piece of work in the new financial year on the whole of the land drainage recovery program, and it will help us, I think, make some good decisions on that particular matter. So the two issues that seem to sort of spring to attention, because I discussed them with a couple of people, were the question on energy efficiency, the money that wasn't spent in this financial year, the 35,000 should be carried forward into the next year of the budget, and the other ones in relation to the Banks Peninsula walking tracks, which is at the bottom, second to the bottom of the same page as the submissions on energy efficiency, which is page 3, and the Banks Peninsula walking tracks one doesn't have any financial implications. It's the support for the spine of the lizard network. So if we could begin with the energy efficiency one, I think, Vicky, you'd like to move that. Would someone like to second that? Carry forward. Pauline Cotter. Vicky.
This was money that was approved in the activity management plan time in relation to the council taking some leadership on electric vehicles and the conversion to electric vehicles. Unfortunately, the work hasn't been done this year, but it is scheduled to start very shortly in the new year. Just really important to carry it forward. Obviously, from Christchurch's point of view, 60% of our fossil fuels are used in transport, and we've had a lot of submissions on energy efficiency, on clean energy, and on all sorts of things that we haven't actually reacted to, apart from doing some of this work. So it's just a carry forward from the last year to this.
Does anyone want to speak against that? Oh, a question. Yeah, no, a question's fine. Sorry.
How many cars have we got, or in our fleet, or vehicles? 350. It was just there was an interesting suggestion on the weekend about the whole of government, and I just wondered, actually, would you know in local government how many vehicles there are across the local government fleet? Guess. 5,000, 10,000?
I'll just give you the standard answer we used to give to parliamentary questions like that, and that's heaps.
A lot. Okay. No, because I thought that could be quite
exactly
a broader
that sort of
conversation.
Yeah.
We are in that conversation, working ICA sort of facilitating that discussion around in Christchurch, a whole of government fleet, of which electrics are a key part of that. We're heavily involved in that discussions with Kevin Crutchfield.
But if you bought 20,000 cars nationally, that would be a huge discount.
That would make a massive difference. And the other way in which we could do it, Ref, is through our council-owned companies as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
And of course, the other aspect of that is working with a number of providers around the delivery of charging points, rapid charging points, and quite a bit of interest from the marketplace in actually delivering something in that space.
And actually an offer to have them come into Christchurch at very little or no cost. So those are the things that it becomes really important to get this sorted and actually starting.
So we are in train. Is there an electric train? I'm not sure. We are in train, but yeah, there's work to continue to do.
Very good. Yanni.
Check. I think there was a cafe meeting this morning. So we've got the carbon credits. Do we have any residual balance from that funding? Because the other thing that came up where there is a need for this money is the energy efficiency measures that the ECA are doing to our community energy action are doing to our social housing units. And it was just kind of, we're carrying forward money, we've got a program that needs money, it's all ready to go, and it's helping deal with an immediate problem in winter. So yeah, well, I don't know if it's cafe money or this money, but can any of this go towards those social housing, community energy action improvements? Or is this going to be tagged for something specific?
This is for electric vehicles and for taking some leadership on electric vehicles largely. That's what we tagged it for. For the social housing, the insulation, which is where Community Energy Action have been very active, is absolutely imperative. When we reprioritise, the insulation of our existing units just has to happen from the housing fund, wherever, doesn't matter.
Okay, so that's a different thing. So the other thing is, in the response that I got back around the parking,
I knew you were going to raise that.
We're also, just in terms of the all-of-government approach, it's not just a case of us buying more cars, or is it kind of a case of car sharing, so that you've got these expensive assets, but we don't need as many of them, so that we can get the utilisation from them?
That's the overall principle. It's to rationalise the overall fleet across a number of providers.
Just don't sell them internally. Oh, sorry.
Or make them disappear off the books.
We're building a couple of stadiums.
So basically it's around overall reduction of fleet size across a range of departments, and then using technology to basically to increase the efficiency and rate of use of them.
You know, I'm asking something slightly different, which is, if you have the Justice and Emergency Precinct, for example, that has no car parking, but they've probably got their own cars parked. Are we looking at an all-of-government approach in terms of having, 300 cars sitting in the central city being utilised, 25% of the time, versus, say, 150 cars being used 50 or 75% of the time? That doesn't matter if it's council or justice, it's actually just like a Uber.
I'd love to share a police car.
Well, whatever, but MSD, all these government departments are coming back into town, and they've got no parking. Right, okay, that's great.
But also to think about delivering cars differently, so travel, so using sort of like not taxis, but a sort of a taxi service, so people actually join vehicles rather than individuals taking vehicles. There's a whole range of options being looked at. So in some respects it is Uber style, it is user friendly, but it's all about reducing overall fleet demand and maximising technology to maximise utilisation.
And energy efficiency.
Energy efficiency.
It's a great concept. I think it's excellent. Good. All right. So I will put that motion then. All those in favour say aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. And another one, a joyful one here. I'm sure that Andrew would like to move this. And who would like to second the spine of the lizard? Paul. Andrew.
Great, thank you very much indeed. This is one of my favourite projects, and I'm really pleased to put this amendment. You may recall a couple of submissions on this during the submissions period, but the broad vision of the Spine of the Lizard project is to develop the network of trails linking the Banks Peninsula Valley communities and the summit walkway from Gebby's Pass to Hilltop into a cohesive and well-managed recreational asset. There are aspects here of recreation, environmental education, and an easy opportunity for urban people to be introduced to tramping in what is essentially a part of our local environment. The upgrade of the summit walkway from Gebby's Pass to Hilltop essentially links the two craters of Banks Peninsula, so links Littleton Harbour with Akaroa Harbour. And has involved a partnership between the Department of Conservation, the Rod Donald Trust and private landowners. Positive outcomes so far have been a major clearing of gorse from the tracks, development of the new Rod Donald hut at Waipuna Saddle above Little River, and Doc working on the sign of the pack horse, so there are now 2 huts up there along the track that allow for a multi-day tramping experience within very easy drive of Christchurch. So essentially this is a track not only linking the 2 harbours, but connecting a series of upland Department of Conservation reserves, as I say, in partnership between the Rod Donald Banks Peninsula Trust, the Department of Conservation and private landowners. There are no financial implications to this amendment. All we're doing is simply asking for Council's support of this project so that it can, for example, be added to the network of tracks that are on the Council's website, so that the City Council logo can be used on collateral, and so that Council resources can be used in its development. So no financial implications, and I hope all councillors would agree a good outcome that's essentially a metropolitan project that allows for increased recreational opportunities on Banks Peninsula.
Sorry. All those in favour say aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. Now, I've just noticed that there's a couple of little ones that we could just probably deal with quickly. On the first page, install additional rubbish recycling bins by the Sumner lifeboat buildings. I know that this is not really the, like LTP stuff. It's probably rats and mice, but sometimes these irritants are the things that we can resolve quite quickly. Staff advice is a minor increase in operational cost of services, so I'm happy to accept that as an amendment. Yanni, you want to move that? And seconded, Paul?
Just ask, because in this whole, this great decision about the town hall and sustainability, we had all these recycling waste stations that were put in for the Rugby World Cup in the central city. There was like 3 on every street corner. And I just wondered whether we've looked at circulating those, or maybe the ones from the red zone, into these areas. So it's kind of a sustainable use. So I don't know whether staff can give a response, but it's a pretty small thing.
Yeah.
I don't know what capacity we have to provide new bins. I know philosophically there was a view previously that we should remove rubbish bins and people take their rubbish with them, but that hasn't really been very successful in some of these areas, and we've now got a rat problem in Sumner as well. So.
Yeah, well, I think that, I've made the comment before that quite often there is an appropriate response, which is not to provide rubbish bins, but to have signs there that simply say, don't bring your rubbish with you, take it with you when you go, or don't, but the point is that in some areas that is extremely effective because people actually, provide, if an area is well cared for, then you're not going to be the first person to leave rubbish there, if you're there for a family picnic. So there are different views on it, but the thing is that it's a small increase in operational cost. It's perfectly acceptable within the budget that we've got, and we should just get on and do it.
Can we look at recirculating or repurposing?
I'm sure that they will look at repurposing, yep. And Paul, you're a seconder on that? I'll put that motion. All those in favour say aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. And if we turn over the page, enable curbside bin collection within central city residential zones. We all heard that passionate plea. The recommendation from Council is to review the curbside collection services for businesses in high-density residential developments within 4 Avenue suburban malls and high-density developments where curbside collection is not practicable, with a view to recommending a system which aligns with the services provided across the city and provides a workable solution for all parties. I think that's a fair enough recommendation.
The recommendation is actually doing the opposite of what we're asking for. So there's 2 issues in the central city. There's the new intensive housing developments that don't want to pay the levy because they've got an alternative system, and they can't see why they should have to contribute. And then there's the new residential that's been built that is in residential zones but has probably an entrance onto a commercial periphery. So this one is Kilmore Cambridge Terrace. So because I think the entrance is out in one direction, they're not on the map of the contractor for collection. So what we want is, we can give the specific address, although it seemed logical to me that we have got a residential zone, properties within that should have access to these services. So reviewing it to where it's not practical and recommending a system which aligns, I don't know, it's a lot of complication, I think, for a pretty simple thing. So I don't know whether you just want to fix this one specific property now and then do
but I'm accepting the proposal, which is that we enable curbside bin collection within central city residential zones. So that's an enabling thing, and so staff will come back to us with the with the actual proposal, but we're enabling it. We want that to happen.
Is it? But how long is it going to take?
The intent is to come back with something that's, I think we've said, workable solution for all parties, and that means there are different needs and demands in there. So the intent is to solve the problem that you've raised. But if there's an individual one you want to talk to me now.
But there was more than one problem. It wasn't just residential, it was commercial within malls as well. Yep. So it is more than one issue, but we want to enable curbside collection within the central city residential zones, which you've highlighted. The staff recommendation sits alongside that, and I think that's good enough. Yep. So do you want to move that? And Paul, I'll put that motion. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. Very good. So I'm... Yeah, we're going to have to... That's not... Yeah, I just, can we deal with that tomorrow? Because we're going to need some, you know, sort of a calculator run on some of these extra money that's being put on budget.
Well, I mean, the money that we're talking, 30,000, huge compared.
Yes, but it's extra going on the budget. This is not a reallocation within the budget, so it's slightly different.
Actually, it could be, because the idea is that it becomes a line item, so it could actually come out of the existing grants funding. It's just that it's got its own line, so it doesn't go through this annual contestable process.
I see.
So it's not contestable. So if I could just...
Okay.
A lot of today we've talked, prior to this, we had talked about Wainui and the environment, and through all this we've been talking about environment issues, etc. And the best way to sort it out is to teach young and get those really good habits starting young. The Enviro Schools system, I've been involved with both my children, with preschools and primary schools, and the habits that are formed and the blackmail those children put on their parents and grandparents and other family members to raise the awareness of what you can do and what you should do is absolutely priceless. And I think it is probably one of the best programs getting that and those habits spread around our communities and into later life. So I think for $30,000, this is one of the best investments in the future in our children and our families that we can make. So I would really like to recommend that this is made a line item and not a contestable item.
As well. That,
so are you seconding it?
Yeah, well, I moved it. But,
okay. Other way around.
But basically what we did a few years ago is we put aside the environmental groups that made a difference to our city into a line item, because there's some work that these groups do. I think of the Banks Peninsula Conservation Trust or the, I think it was Autumn Bradley. So we recognised the value of that environmental contribution, and we thought it was silly. Every year we spent all this time going through when actually there's groups that we probably wouldn't reduce the funding, and there was accountabilities in place, and we just thought, get rid of the red tape, just get on and do it. So, if it was just like a 3-year funding commitment, it gives certainty to the people that are delivering the program. I think we heard quite compelling from ECAN around, a number of schools are participating in this region. ECAN are partial funders, but I just endorse the comment that Tim made, is that when you think about everything we're doing in terms of encouraging community involvement and engagement and action on a number of issues, Enviro Schools is a really stunningly successful program, and it's complementary to a lot of the other objectives we have. And I just think of those Kashmir students that came in. I think Kashmir's been involved in Enviro Schools for almost a duration since it's been in Christchurch, and just look at the impact it's having on some of those young people that are coming and talking to us. So it's a small cost, it's a huge benefit, and I strongly endorse making it non-contestable. And I'm happy to take the money out of the grants program so that it's not an increase in funding, it's just 3 years certainty that they can get on and do it.
Well, I mean, the thing is that I do support Enviro Schools. A lot of my schools and my former electorate were members of Enviro Schools, and it is excellent. It's a fantastic program. But we're doing a review of our whole grant system, and I'm perfectly happy that we override the contestability of this funding for next financial year. But I'd much rather that we actually looked at a principled way of pulling out what isn't contestable and what is. So I'd much rather that we looked at, you know, whether X amount was going to be allocated to environmental projects or whatever. I don't mind having allocations within particular budgets as non-contestable inside a contestable fund. But I worry about making this non-contestable now before we've actually finally made the decision. I'd be perfectly happy if we were reinstating the funding provision for Enviro schools of $30,000 from the contestable fund this year, you know, for the 2015-2016 year, and the question of contestability to be decided when we look at the whole of the grants structure. That would be my preference. Yeah.
To give us security for the next season would be great, and I'll support that. But I think it just does such good work, and it starts at the bud at where the kids are at the very small age, and by the time they start getting into secondary school, we've started seeing that, and with the families, I just think it's one of those programs that is absolutely essential.
So why don't you put it for at least 1 year and allow the council, when it's being the grants committee, to sort out whether it's 1 or 3 or 5 at that time.
The risk is that's what happened last year, and it got its funding completely cut.
Yeah.
So I guess I personally, the energy that people spend flying down, making submissions, applying for grants, actually probably costs, you know, every time they do it. So happy for it to be part of that review around those environmental groups if that's something that's happening. I just wonder if there's a compromise, if we just give certainty of funding for 2 years and accept so that they can just get on and do it, but that we do have an engaged process.
Yeah. So that the council reinstate funding for Enviro schools of $30,000 per year, 2015, 16, 16, 17, and that the issue of contestability be dealt with in the terms of the review.
So it's out of the grant funding?
That's from grants.
From grants.
Is there any government funding for this program?
Well, that's what I want to ask, because actually there actually used to be.
Do you have to keep doing their job for them?
Yes, look, I mean, and I kind of didn't really want to enter into that part of the debate.
Oh, why not? It's getting late.
We'll benefit from
Well,
it
why don't we
anyway,
do the Metro Sports
I don't disagree with that. Well, take it out of that budget. You won't notice the difference.
Yeah.
Funding review, obviously looking at what government curriculum through schools. I mean, we have this problem with swimming education at a community board level and a number of other things as well that we do. So I don't think it's an issue of the contestability of the funding review. I think it's actually a lot wider than that. Like, it's really a key question of how should council fund.
Okay, so that the council reinstate the fund for environmental.
Isn't it that the council reinstate funding provision for Enviro schools $30,000 for those 2 years from the grants fund?
Yeah, from the grants fund. So just leave it at that. And but you're right. That's the wider issue that we're going to be looking at there. Because I think I might have been part of a government that did fund Enviro schools, which is why I wanted to do a little bit more research on what happened to that, because that was changed. Yep. All right. So I'll put that motion. All those in favour say aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. All right. So I think that we'll now adjourn. It's 4 o'clock. And that the last hour of our working day, you can all spend going back through the individual amendments that you've put forward, looking at some of the wording of them, and if you've got any sort of questions that you'd like to have answered in the morning, just if you could flick them through, sort of Nicola